Today, I have a 1-hour English lesson that's going to review must-know basic English grammar concepts. Now, although these are basic English grammar concepts, even advanced students make these mistakes. So this will be a great lesson for you to review these concepts or to learn these concepts. Now, because this lesson is long, what I've done is I've divided it into individual sections where you'll learn a specific concept and then you can move on to the next section and take breaks whenever you need. Welcome back to JForrest English Training. Of course, I'm Jennifer and this is your place to become a fluent, confident English speaker. Let's get started. First, let's review the difference between still, yet, and already. Let's start off with already. We use already to talk about something that has happened or may have happened. So think about the verb tenses. We're talking about the past, and your verb tenses are going to be the past simple or the present perfect. For example, I could say, I already ate. I already ate. Of course, that action took place in the past. Now, you could invite me to the movies and I could say, I've already seen that movie. Present perfect. I've already seen that movie. And of course, it was in the past that I saw that movie. Now notice for the placement of already, it's generally placed before the main verb. So now it's your turn. Pause the video and put a sentence using already in the past simple and the present perfect in the comments below. Now let's talk about yet. We generally use yet in a question form or a negative sentence. And your verb tense is going to be the present perfect. As a question, you're asking a question about the past. So I could ask, have you eaten yet? Have you eaten yet? And of course, if you want to answer yes, you would use which one? Yes. I've already eaten. Now we can combine a question and the reply could be in the negative, so they could both use yet. For example, I could ask you, have you decided yet? And your answer in the negative would be, no, I haven't decided yet. Now notice the placement of yet. We put it after the main verb, so it's generally at the end of your sentence. All right, so now why don't you try a question with yet and then a reply to that question, and your reply will be in the negative as well. So put those two examples in the comments. Now let's talk about still. We use still to talk about an action that started in the past and continues until now. Your verb tenses are generally going to be the present simple or the present continuous. For example, I could say, I'm still going to the party. So keep in mind, I made a decision to go to the party maybe last week, okay? I said, I'm going to the party. Now, maybe the weather is really bad today, so a lot of people aren't going to the party anymore. But I want to confirm that this action that happened in the past, my decision, it still applies now. So I can say, I'm still going to the party. I'm still going to the party. Now we use this with routines a lot, which is why you'll hear it in the present simple. For example, I could say, I still go to the gym every day. So I started going to the gym every day in the past, maybe a month ago. So my friend, who I haven't seen in a while, wants to know if I still go to the gym. And I could say, yeah, I still go to the gym every day. Now notice the placement of still, just like with already, we're going to put it before the main verb. And you know what to do. Now it's your turn to practice. So why don't you try a sentence in the present simple and present continuous and put those in the comments below. Amazing job. Now let's review the difference between do and make. I hear lots of mistakes even from advanced students with these two, and there'll be a quiz at the end of this section to make sure you really know how to use do and make. Now let me give you an example sentence. Last night I the dishes and I dinner. Okay, in this case, what do we need? Do we need do? Do we need make? Put it in the comments below. What do you think we need? Well, first of all, you need to remember that regardless of which one you use, they're verbs, so you have to conjugate them according to your time reference. So my time reference is last night, so I know I'm talking in the past, so I need to conjugate my verbs in the past. Last night, I did the dishes and I made dinner. Did you get them right? Now, let's talk about the rules of when you use do and make. First of all, let me give you a tip. So remember this. If we're talking about an action in general, we use do. If we're talking about producing something, we use make. So that's a general tip you can follow, but just keep in mind there are specific expressions that require one or the other. So you need to keep those in mind as well. So first, let's talk about these general rules. Let's talk about when you use do. We use do with work, chores, and tasks. This is one I commonly see students confuse because I hear a lot of students say, I made my homework. I made my homework. But you don't make homework, okay? You do homework. You do a job. You do chores. You do a task. We use the verb do. Now, we also use do with an unspecified activity. And you're probably very familiar with the question, what are you doing tonight? What are you doing right now? It's a general question. I'm not asking about a specific activity. We use do. What are you doing tonight? Now, we also use do a lot when we replace a verb if the meaning is clear. So in my original example, I said, last night I did the dishes. Do the dishes. But there's another verb that we can use. You can wash the dishes. Now, because the meaning is clear, I can replace the verb wash with do. That might be a little more of an advanced thing for you to understand, but just for now, remember this expression. You do the dishes. So you've already just added one natural expression to your vocabulary because a native English speaker, we're not really gonna say wash the dishes. We say do the dishes. So now let's talk about make. Remember, we use make when you're producing something. So anything that was produced, designed, developed, or constructed, we could use make. For example, I could say this t-shirt was made in China. Now, we also use make specifically with food, drinks, and meals. And that's why I said, last night I made dinner. Can you make me a snack? Can you make me a smoothie, a beverage? Can you make me a cup of coffee? We also use make when you produce an action or a reaction from someone. For example, I could watch a movie and I could say, oh wow, that movie made me made me really sad. That movie made me really sad. It produced a reaction within me. Traffic makes me so angry. That's something that a lot of people say, right? Here's a good one. We use make with plans and decisions. So think of a plan could be, for example, making a dinner reservation. And with decision, you make a decision. So I could ask you, have you made a decision yet? Have you made a decision yet? Now finally, we use make when you produce sounds. For example, I could say, my microphone made a really weird buzzing noise. Or I could say, my lights are making this really high-pitched noise. We can also use it with any sort of verbal sounds. For example, at the end of a presentation, I could say, I really like that comment you made about global warming. So you make a comment because that's a sound you produce. Now let's talk about some general expressions that use either do or make. Remember, expressions in English, you just have to memorize them. So just put these ones into your vocabulary, write them down, and make sure you understand if they use do or make. So our first one, you do someone a favor. So this is a very common expression. I could say, oh, I have a lot of homework to do. Remember, you do homework. Or I have a lot of chores to do. You do chores, you do work. I have a lot of chores to do. Can you do me a favor and make the dinner reservation? So notice, I use do and make in that sentence. Can you do me a favor and make the dinner reservation? Because remember, we use make with plans and arrangements and decisions, but we're using do someone a favor. Think of that just as an expression. Do someone a favor. So can you do me a favor? Hopefully you said yes. Now I'm sure you're already familiar with this expression, but I'll share it anyway. And that's, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do for a living? But most of the time we don't include for a living and we simply say, what do you do? And of course, I'm asking you about your job and we use do. Now, interestingly, we have another expression which is make a living, to make a living. Now, when you make a living by doing something, it means that's your primary source of income. So I could say, I make a living by doing YouTube videos. That's my primary source of income. That's how I make a living. So somebody could ask me, what do you do? I'm a YouTuber. Well, how do you make a living? Because they might be asking me, okay, but how do you make money? And of course I would say, I make a living by recording YouTube videos. That's how I make a living. Now, of course, you also make money. So you make a living which is related to money, and then also you make money. So again, somebody could ask me, what do you do? I'm a YouTuber, but how do you make money? How do you make money on YouTube, right? That's always the mystery. People want to know that. So just remember those two expressions. One of them uses do because it's a general category, but then specifically almost about producing, right? Thinking to a general category. You make money, you make a living. That's more about production. So we're using make. Now, another one that doesn't really fit into the category, but you can think of it as an expression, and that's make a mistake. You make a mistake, okay? So you don't do a mistake. Sometimes I hear that. You make a mistake. It's just an expression. So you could say, I was doing my homework, or I was doing my taxes. That's another one where we're replacing the verb, which is probably file. I was filing my taxes, but we replace that verb with do. I was doing my taxes and I made a mistake. Or we could combine two makes. I was making dinner and I made a mistake. So just keep that in mind. A lot of the time you're going to be mixing and matching in one sentence. I'll leave you with a positive expression. Think of this as an expression, and this one's with do. You do your best. Do your best. So if you say, Jennifer, I'm not sure if I can pass this quiz at the end of the video, I'm going to say, just do your best. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake, just do your best. So that's a nice word of encouragement, an expression of encouragement that you can use with someone if they're feeling a little apprehensive or tentative about doing something. You can say, just do your best. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake, just do your best. So with that, let's get to the quiz. So I'm going to share the quiz on the screen. You're going to have 10 questions to answer. I'll leave it up for a minute, so just pause the video. You'll need more time. And then after that minute, it will display the answers. So make sure you let us know in the comments how you did on the quiz. How many did you get right out of 10? Did you make any mistakes? And of course, just do your best. So now let's do the quiz. So how did you do with that quiz? Share your score in the comments below, and let's continue on with our next section. And let's look at the difference between do, did, or does. What's the difference between do, does, and did? Well, you need to understand that all three of these are just different forms of the verb to do. So the verb to do is the infinitive. Now, do and does are the present simple conjugations of the verb. And you simply choose one or the other based on the subject that you have. So if you're forming a sentence and your subject is I, you, we, or they, you need to choose do. If your subject is he, she, or it, so third person singular, you need to choose does. And that's it. That's the only difference between do or does in affirmative sentences in the present simple. But keep in mind that do as a verb is used in very specific sentences in the present simple. So for example, you do chores. You do chores. The verb do is what we need to complete the sentence. So I could say, I do chores every Sunday. This is a routine, is in the present simple. Because my subject is I, then I need do. Now, you can also do homework. For example, do is the verb that we use with homework. Now I could say my sister, which of course is she as a subject. My sister does homework every night. Again, this is a routine, so I need the present simple. My subject is my sister, she, so I need does. Now let's talk about did. Did is the past simple form of the verb to do. And as a past simple verb, there's no difference with subjects. So you use did for all subjects. So that one is easier to remember. And of course, if it's the past simple, then we just need to make sure that our time reference is in the past. So I could say, we did our homework last night. She did her homework this morning, assuming this morning is already in the past, because right now is this afternoon or this evening. So this morning is in the past. She did her homework this morning. So notice, it doesn't matter if I use we or she. The subject doesn't matter because did is used for all subjects. You just need to make sure that your time reference is a past time reference, where do and does, your time reference is going to be a routine action. So you're going to hear time references like always, usually, every. Then you know it's a present simple. You're doing awesome. Let's move on and look at later and after. Later is most commonly used as an adverb, and it means at a time in the future. It's not a specific time. For example, I could say, I'll wash the dishes. Now, this is just a statement about something I'm going to do. You already know it's in the future because I used will, I'll wash the dishes. So if you'd like to add a time reference, when will you wash the dishes? You can choose later, and you can say, I'll wash the dishes later. But what does later mean? Does it really tell the person when you'll wash the dishes? Not really, because it's not a specific time reference. All we know is that you're not going to do it right now, and you'll do it at some point in the future. I'll wash the dishes later. Now, after is most commonly used as a preposition. We use after to show the sequence of events. And those sequence of events can be in terms of time, in terms of place, or in terms of order. But it is commonly used in terms of time. Sequence of events in time, which means one event is going to happen later than another event. So really, it has that same meaning as later in the sense that it's a time in the future. So what's different about them? Well, it's really just the sentence structure and how you use them, because after is a preposition. So I could say, I'll wash the dishes after something else. That's the key. We generally use after and then something else because it shows the relationship between two things. So wash the dishes, something else. What's the order of them? Which one comes first? That's how we use after. So I could say, I'll wash the dishes after I watch the movie. So I have wash dishes, watch movie, but I don't know the order. And that's what after helps us do, show the order. And in this case, it's order in time. I'll wash the dishes after I watch the movie. Now notice how I used a full clause, a full sentence with a subject, a verb, and an object. I'll wash the dishes after I watch the movie, a full clause. We don't need to do that. You can simply have a noun as well. So it could be two objects, just two nouns rather than two actions. So I could say, I'll wash the dishes after the movie. After the movie, okay? So you don't have to use a full clause, and it's probably very common for native speakers to just use the object and not include the action. I'll wash the dishes after the movie. Now here's the mistake I see students make. They say something like, I'll wash the dishes later the movie. So they use later and then they include a something, a noun, or even a clause. You can't do that. You can't say, I'll wash the dishes later the movie. Generally, we use later, period. I'll wash the dishes later. And that's it. So if you want to specify an action or a thing that comes next, you use after, and then you can specify a noun or an action. I'll wash the dishes after the movie. That's correct. Now, one final thing you can do with after is you can leave out the action or the noun. So just like I'll say, I'll wash the dishes later, period, you can do the same thing with after. I'll wash the dishes after, period. We do this when the context is obvious. So let's say you and your friend just talked about watching a movie. You're sitting on the couch. You have the remote in your hand. It's obvious. So when you say, oh, wash the dishes after, your friend knows that it's after the movie. It's obvious based on context. So if it's obvious based on context, grammatically, you can leave it out. And then you will have after and just a period. You don't have to specify the action or the noun. So just remember, probably the most important thing to remember is that you can't say later the movie. You can't say that. That's the most common mistake that I see. Amazing job. Now let's talk about cannot as one word, cannot as two words, and can't. Let's start with cannot as one word. So really pay attention that this is one word, and spelling, we have two N's, but it's in one word. Now cannot is the negative form of the verb can. That's it, simple as that. So let's take a positive sentence with can. I could say, I can pick you up at the airport. I can pick you up at the airport. That's a positive sentence. But if I want to make this sentence negative, all I need to do is change can with cannot. Remember, one word, two N's. So that would be, I cannot pick you up at the airport. So to make a positive can sentence negative, simply use one word, cannot, and replace that with can. It's as simple as that. Now, let's talk about can't. Notice the spelling. There's one end and it's a contraction, right? Every time you see the apostrophe, you know it's a contraction. So can't is just the contracted form of cannot. You can think of it as the short form. Now, you use it in the exact same way. So we take our positive sentence, I can pick you up at the airport. And then to make it negative, we just change it with can't. Can't. I can't pick you up at the airport. Can't is more common than using cannot, the longer form. Now, let's talk about cannot as two words. First of all, know that this is not the negative form of the verb can, okay? It's not the negative form. If you use it as the negative form, in spoken English, you won't hear a difference. But in written English, if you use cannot as two words, It's a spelling mistake. As simple as that, it's a spelling mistake. Okay, because the correct spelling of the negative form of can is cannot, one word. But cannot as two words still exists, but it's not very commonly used. We can use it, for example, when you have not in one part of a sentence, and then can is just your verb of that sentence. But can and not, when they're two words, aren't together, okay? Their relationship isn't together. So for example, you're probably familiar with the expression, not only but. That's a very common expression in English. Not only X, but also Y. Not only but. So notice in this expression, I have the word not only. Now, theoretically, my verb in this sentence could be can. And if that's the case, you might see can and not side by side, but they're not together. It's not making can negative. Not relates to not only but, or another expression that uses not. So for example, I could say, I can not only pick you up at the airport, I can also help you unpack. Okay, just to give an example. So notice, I can now not only pick you up at the airport. So can is just the verb in the sentence. It's not connected with not only but. I can not only pick you up at the airport, I can also help you unpack. So that's just theoretically you could see can and not side by side as two separate words, but honestly that's not very common, and I don't think you're going to see that. When you see can and not side by side as two words, most likely it's just a spelling mistake and they wanted to make can negative, which is one word, cannot. So to summarize, cannot as one word is the negative form of can. Can't is a contraction of cannot. It's the most commonly used. Cannot as two words is possible, but it's not the negative form of the verb can. So now you know how to use these, and now of course it's your turn to practice. I want you to leave 3 examples, one with cannot, the negative form, one with can, the contraction, and then why not try I can not only but. That would be a pretty advanced structure to practice. So you can leave all those examples in the comments below. You're doing wonderful. Let's continue on and look at come and came. What's the difference between come and came? Well, there's a very simple answer to this question. First, we have to know that the verb is to come. That's the infinitive form of the verb. So then you take your infinitive form and you're going to do 2 things. You're going to conjugate it with the subject, and you're going to conjugate it with the time reference as well. The conjugations of the verb to come are the base infinitive is come, the past simple is came, and the participle is come. So your 3 forms of the verb, come, came, come. Come, came, come. Irregular conjugation. Now, we can use the base form in the present simple verb tense. The present simple, of course, we're talking about facts or routines. I could say, she always comes late. She always comes late. So notice, I take my verb come, but then I have to think about my subject, which is she. So I have to add an S to the verb come so it's conjugated correctly with my subject, she. She always comes late. Now, if it was they as a subject, it would be come, because I don't add an S. I only add an S for he, she, it subjects. They always come late. She always comes late. They always come late. Now I can take that same sentence, but I could talk about yesterday. If I talk about yesterday, now my time reference is in the past, so I have to conjugate the verb in the past, and in this case, I need the past simple. Your time reference will tell you what verb tense you need. Yesterday is an indicator of the past simple. In the past simple, there are no different conjugations. We only use the verb came with all subjects. So I can say, she came late yesterday. She always comes late. That's the present simple. She came late yesterday. They always come late. The present simple. They came late yesterday. The past simple. So now you know how to use come and came, but what about that third form of the verb? That's the past participle, which is also come. We use the past participle most commonly with the present perfect verb tense. The present perfect verb tense is have or has as your auxiliary verb, and then your past participle, which in this case is come. So I could say, she's come late 3 times this week. She's. Notice that S in my contraction is actually the verb has. She has come, she has, she's come late 3 times this week. Now I'm using the present perfect here because my time reference is unfinished. It starts in the past, but it's an unfinished time reference because this week is still in progress and it's possible for her to come late again. She's come to work late 3 times this week. Now, in the present perfect verb tense, the past participle come doesn't change, but we do conjugate our verb has or have depending on the subject. So if my subject is they, I need the auxiliary verb have. They have, they've come late 3 times this week. So that's how you would use come as the past participle. To summarize, we have our verb to come, and then we have the 3 forms of the verb. The first form, come. The second form, came, and the third form, come. You need to make sure you're conjugating your verb with your time reference and your subject as well. Come is a very common verb in English, so you should definitely feel confident using it in your speech. So to do that, you need to practice. So why don't you leave 3 examples, one with each form of the verb, present simple, past simple, and present perfect, and of course you can try different subjects as well to make this very challenging, and leave your examples in the comments below. Let's keep going and look at didn't and wasn't. Both of these are the past simple forms, and both of them are past simple negative. Wasn't is the past simple negative form of the verb to be, but wasn't is only used with the subjects I, he, she, and it. Didn't is a past simple negative form, but it's an auxiliary verb, which means it doesn't have a base verb itself. It's used with any base verb. So our sentence structure would be subject, didn't, base verb to form a complete sentence that's past simple negative. To understand both of these, let's start with a positive sentence in the present. So we'll do a present simple positive sentence, and then we'll see how we can change that sentence into the past simple negative so you can see the transformation of how we use didn't and wasn't. So let's start with our positive present simple sentence for the verb to be. I'm there. I'm there. Pretty simple, right? To be there. I'm there. Or I could say, she's there. Now, I can make this sentence negative in the present simple simply by adding not. I'm not there. She isn't there. But remember, wasn't is the form of the verb to be, and it's negative, but it's used in the past simple. So I need to take my two sentences and have a past simple time reference. So let's use yesterday. Yesterday, I know I'm in the past simple, and I know that my sentence is going to be negative. So I can say, yesterday, she wasn't there. Yesterday, I wasn't there. So that's how the transformation took place from having a present simple positive to present simple negative to past simple negative. And remember, wasn't is only used for the subjects I, he, she, it. So let's do the same thing and see how we can get to didn't. So let's start with a present simple positive sentence. I go to bed at 10:30. So here my verb is go, to go. I go to bed at 10:30. Now, when we take regular verbs, excluding to be as a verb has different rules, okay? So we take regular verbs like the verb go, we have our positive in the present simple. To form the negative in the present simple, I need an auxiliary verb. And that auxiliary verb that I'm going to use is don't. I don't go to bed at 10:30. This is the auxiliary verb for the subjects I, you, we, and they. I don't go to bed at 10:30. So now I have a negative sentence, but it's in the present simple. It talks about a routine, but I want to talk about a past simple. So I can use the keyword yesterday. So I know I'm in the past simple. Yesterday, I didn't go to bed at 10:30. So to form a negative sentence in the past simple for regular verbs, we need to follow our structure subject, didn't, and then our base verb. Our base verb is go. I didn't go to bed at 10:30 yesterday. So remember, wasn't is only used with the verb to be, and it's only used with the verb to be with the subjects I, he, she, it. Didn't is used for regular verbs in the past simple negative as the auxiliary verb. And your sentence structure is subject, didn't, base verb. That's how you would form complete sentences in the past simple negative. So now is your turn to practice. I want you to leave two examples, one with wasn't and one with didn't. Put them in the comments below and make sure you have a past simple reference. So it could be yesterday, but it could be other past simple time references as well. You're doing so great. Let's keep going and look at do you and are you. Both of these are question forms in the present simple, but they use different verbs and different structures. So let's begin with are you. Now, are, of course, is the verb to be. So are you is forming a question in the present simple using the verb to be. Our subject is you. So that's why we need are, because that's the conjugated verb to be with our subject you. Now, we use the verb to be in the present simple for facts. Facts about the world or facts about ourselves as well. For example, I could ask you, because remember, this is a question, so you're going to ask someone about a fact. So I could ask you, are you American or British? Are you? Are you American or British? Now, another fact would be your job. So I could ask you, are you a software engineer? Now, I could also ask you a fact about your physical description, and I could ask you, for example, are you tall? Assuming we're chatting and I can't see you, so I don't know if you're tall or not, and I could ask, are you tall? Now, let's take a look at the sentence structure. Because using the verb to be in question form, we use something called inversion. So we take our subject and our verb, which would be the structure for a positive sentence, and we invert them, which means we switch them. So our sentence structure for questions using the verb to be in the present simple is verb plus subject plus object. So we know our verb is the verb to be, are, and we know our subject is you because we're only talking about are, so our subject and our verb need to conjugate. Are you? And then I just need my object, the question, the rest of the sentence. Are you tall? Now keep that sentence structure in mind while we take a look at do you. Do you is also a question form in the present simple. The difference is do is an auxiliary verb, which means do doesn't have any meaning in that word. It's only there grammatically. So to have meaning in the sentence, we need a main verb. Do is the auxiliary verb, and we still need a main verb. Now, in the present simple, I'm going to ask you about yourself or about your routine. So, for example, I could ask, do you live in London? So, of course, here, live is our main verb. But I need my auxiliary verb do. Do you live in London? I can't just do inversion with my subject and verb. If I did that, it would be live you in London? Live you in London? And we know that isn't grammatically correct for English sentence structure. So we need our auxiliary verb do. And do is conjugated with our subject you. Do you live in London? Another question. Do you have a dog? So here, have is our main verb, but I can't say, have you a dog? So I need, do you have a dog? I need my auxiliary verb, do. So compare our two sentence structures, because here our sentence structure is auxiliary verb, subject, main verb. Auxiliary verb is do because our subject is you, and do conjugates with the subject you. Do you, and now we need a main verb, but the form of this is the base verb, which means it's the infinitive without to. So to live, we get rid of to, and we have live. Do you live? And then the rest of the sentence, the object. So with are you, our sentence structure was verb, subject, object. Do you, our sentence structure is auxiliary verb, do, subject, main verb, which is the base verb, and then the object. They're both used in question form with the present simple. And this is something that you absolutely must know to understand basic English sentence structure. So now it's your turn to practice. I want you to leave 2 questions in the comments below, one with do you and one with are you. Amazing job. Now let's look at the difference between ever and never. You can think of ever as at least once, or one or more times. That's ever. Now, never, you can think of this as 0 times. Never, 0 times, not once. Ever and never are commonly used in the present perfect, especially in question form. So let's take a question in the present perfect. Have you been to Banff? Have you been to Banff? Now, in the present perfect, it's extremely common. In fact, it even sounds more natural to me to use the word ever. Have you ever been to Banff? Now, we add ever to present perfect questions because they're asking about life experience. And remember, it means at least once. So if you've been to Banff at least once or more in your life, then you can answer yes to the question. If you've been to Banff 0 times, then you'll say, no, I've never been to Banff. So notice ever, we use it in the question form, but we don't use it in the positive answer. As a positive answer, I would just say, yeah, I've been to Banff once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and I give my answer. So let me ask you a question in the present perfect. Have you ever been skydiving? So, have you ever been skydiving? You can put your answer in the comments below, and also why don't you ask us a have you ever question and make it a fun and interesting question. Put that in the comments below. Now, although ever and never are very commonly used in the present perfect, we can also use them in the present simple. Never is very commonly used in the present simple. So remember, it means 0 times. And in the present simple, we're asking about routine actions. So we're asking about the frequency of actions you do. So it would be very common to say never for certain actions. For example, I could say, I never work out at night. I never work out at night. So this is not part of my daily routine. It takes place 0 times in my daily routine. We can use ever in question form in the present simple, although it's much less common than it is in the present perfect. But I could ask you, do you ever work out at night? Now in this case, I'm asking you about the frequency of this action in your daily routine. So as a reply, you're just going to use an adverb of frequency and say, oh, I sometimes work out, I usually work out, I frequently work out, I rarely work out, and you're going to give me your answer. Remember, if it's 0 times, then you use never. I never work out at night. So what about you? Do you ever work out at night? You can put your answer in the comments below, and at the same time, why don't you ask your fellow students a question using do you ever? So remember, this is a present simple question. You're asking about the frequency of that action in their daily routine. So now you know the difference between ever and never, and remember to do all the practice in the comments below. This is our last section. Now let's look at the difference between for or since. I hear so many mistakes with these 2 words, and as we go through this lesson, you'll complete quizzes to make sure you really understand how to use for and since. Now, there's a specific time that you need to choose either for or since. They're not interchangeable, and it will make your sentence grammatically incorrect if you're using the wrong one. So first, let's talk about for. We use for duration, okay? So you can think of it as a time that has a start and an end, a duration of time. For example, for 20 minutes, For 3 weeks? For 7 months? Or how about for 12 years? Now, we use since with a specific time. So you can think of it as a precise moment in time. For example, 9 a.m. last Monday, June 3rd, 2014. So that's the first thing you need to know to use these correctly. For is a duration of time and since is a specific time. Now let's talk about the verb tenses that you need for each. So here's a little quiz for you. I'm going to show you some sentences using for in different verb tenses. And I want you to tell me which ones are correct and which ones are incorrect. And keep in mind, we're talking about the verb tense specifically. So that's what you need to look at. So I'll show you the example sentences now. So which ones are correct and which ones are incorrect? Let us know in the comments. Well, I hate to break it to you, but this was a trick question because they're all correct. And the point is that for can be used with many different verb tenses. It's quite diverse in that way. Now, let's do the same thing, but this time we'll do it with since. So again, the time references are all correct. I'm using them all with specific time, but let's take a look at the verb tenses. So I'll show you the sentences and I want you to let us know which ones are correct and incorrect. So how'd you do with this one? How about in the comments, let us know which ones are correct, okay? Put it in the comments. Now this one wasn't a trick question because since is a lot more limited. So here are our example sentences. The only correct ones were number 1 and number 3. You can use since with the present perfect and the present perfect continuous. The reason why is because since we use this for an action that started in the past but continues until now, and we actually don't know when that action is going to end. But it's important, it started in the past, continues till now, and is still in progress. That's when we can use since. All right, so now you know that for is used for a duration of time and it's very diverse. You can use it with many different verb tenses. You know that since we need a specific time and you can use it with the present perfect and the present perfect continuous. Now let me show you a sentence that I see almost every day and it's wrong. And the sentence is, I've been learning English since 2 years. All right, this sentence is wrong. Now, I want you to take this sentence and make it a correct sentence. You're going to need to change either the for or since or the time reference, okay? So make your change and put the correct sentence in the comments below. And also, I want you to practice your own sentence. So leave a comment and use a sentence with for and a sentence with since. Woohoo, you did it! Think of all the grammar concepts that you learned today, or the common mistakes that you might have been making that you corrected in this lesson. So make sure you bookmark this lesson because you should review it again and again to make sure you really understand these concepts, because they are basic English concepts that you need to master to really become fluent and feel confident speaking English in public. And if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe. And before you go, make sure you head on over to my website, JForrestEnglish.com, and download your free speaking guide. In this guide, I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. And until next time, happy studying!